longer term, I'd really started to realize that I often don't really know what I want. And so if there was any way that I could perhaps explore and work out some of the things that I might want. So I figured, journaling, if it gets me to understand myself more deeply, that was enough of a reason for me to give it a try. And so I set off with my intention of journaling. I found a selection of different prompts that I really wanted to have a go at. And on day one, I took one look at the prompt on the page and froze. Doing something like just free writing my thoughts onto the page was just far too much for me to handle. So I did a little bit of research and came across the 6-minute diary. And I thought, yeah, 6 minutes, I can definitely find 6 minutes in a day. The whole setup of the 6-minute diary is that there's kind of 3 very short prompts at the beginning of the day and 3 at the end. There's also heaps of really interesting info in the introduction to the diary. And the prompts were already there. The expectation is that it is very brief. I was super on board. I have to admit that the fact that it was called a diary did set some alarm bells ringing, because as a kid, when you're growing up, keeping a diary is this super cringe thing, and you never ever want anyone to see it because God forbid that they found out who your high school crush was. So yeah, the concept of a diary is either that cringy thing that you wrote into growing up, or it was something that you used to organize your social events. And I don't have any social events to organize. And so that 6-minute diary, it was very like stop, start. Sometimes I did it religiously and built up a bit of a streak. Other times it would sit for a few weeks without me touching it. I came to realize that perhaps the route that I had taken to introduce journaling into my life wasn't quite working with my daily routine. So I started doing the 6-minute diary in a digital format. And because very often I find myself sitting in front of a computer, this worked so much better, to the point where I do a little bit of what I would call free writing. So whenever I come across prompts that I think are interesting to explore, I save them, and then I've got a bank of questions that I can ask myself, and I just set off and write. I don't put any pressure on myself to have to do those every day, but I think it's interesting to incorporate a variety of different questions and ideas for you to kind of mull over and look more inwardly to better understand what's going on and affecting your moods, and what are potential triggers of different behavioral patterns that you might have. I think since I've swapped to making use of prompts, I'm starting to really notice things that I don't think I would have otherwise picked up about myself. I really do think that journaling is such an important part of understanding who you are as an adult in the world. I know that there's a lot of deeply rooted habits and thought patterns that are quite complex, and belief systems that have just been so intrinsically part of me that I hadn't really ever stopped to consider could be wrong or different, or perhaps could do with being rewritten. And I think that journaling has given me a really interesting avenue to discover that about myself. And as a consequence of that, I identify the things that I maybe want to change, or just things that I'm now aware of, so I can almost clock them when they're happening, which I think is an incredibly important part in developing new traits and behaviors, or rerouting how you think or approach particular situations. And it's not really until you dig into yourself that you start to realize what are the things that are important to you. So you can start looking at the goals you want to achieve and the underlying reasoning for those, so that you can actually start to engineer a life for yourself that allows you to unlock those dreams and achieve those things that you want. And so my takeaway there is that journaling is an incredible tool to better understand yourself. Maybe take a look at journaling. So thanks very much. Hope to see you again soon.